Many of us were sold a version of God that's much more like a nitpicky boss with anger issues than the loving father that Jesus seems to talk about in his teachings. And I think because of that false, distorted view of who God is, one of the most common questions I get from students is, how do I even know if I'm saved? How do I know that God's not going to send me to hell, to eternal punishment forever? In fact, I got this question in the comments of one of my videos. They asked, when is my obedience good enough? Right? That whole good enough mindset comes from that distorted view of God, that he's just waiting there with his checklist to see how much you've done wrong or if you've tried hard enough to be good enough for him. And I think at the heart of that false view of God is this idea that God's love for us is somehow tied to our performance. And it's no wonder we feel this way. Think about how we get kids to behave in school. Well, if you don't behave, you're going to lose out on recess. Well, if you don't say sorry to that kid, well, then you're not going to get a snack. There's all of these punishments built into the way that we are programmed as humans that say, if you don't perform, you won't be loved. If you don't perform, you won't get the things that you want out of life. And on the ultimate cosmic scale, we then project this on God that, okay, well, if I don't perform enough, then maybe God won't love me. If I don't perform enough, maybe it's not good enough and then I don't spend eternity with him. If I don't perform enough, well, am I going to spend eternity away from him because he's mad at me now because I didn't perform? And I know this is a sincere, difficult struggle for so many Christians. And so, even in thinking about this, if you're thinking about beating yourself up for not trusting God's love for you, whatever, we need to stop that voice right away. This isn't a sincerity or a rebellion issue. This is an issue of our own security with God, right? It's a version of insecurity because we've been sold a version of God that we're not sure we can trust. But this isn't the version of God that we see revealed in Jesus. Our God is not a score-keeping God. This is why he tells the parable of the unforgiving servant in Matthew chapter 18 to drive this point home that God is not keeping score any longer, so we shouldn't be keeping score either with ourselves in God or with ourselves in others. That's the message from that parable. And the heart of the problem with this score-keeping God that makes us feel anxious is that it drives us to fear. And what we learn in First John is that there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. So when we trust God, when we know his love, it casts out this anxiety that we no longer need to be afraid of his punishment and judgment. But there's still that question, how do we know? How do we know if we are actually saved? How do we know we've repented good enough? How do we know we've done enough? So I want to share a story from Jesus's life. There's plenty of places we can point to in the Bible that illustrate this principle, but I want to point just to one story and then one thing that the Apostle Paul quotes from the Old Testament. At the end of Jesus's life in Luke chapter 23, he's on the cross. And he's on the cross between two other criminals who are receiving this corporal punishment. They are also receiving the death penalty. And one of the guys heaps mockery upon Jesus. And then the other guy stops him and he says, come on, man. I mean, this is my translation. It's like, come on, you know that we're here because we deserve this, but he doesn't deserve this. And then he turns to Jesus and says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That's the whole line. So there's nothing more to the conversation after that. He says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And what Jesus says to this man is, today you will be with me in paradise. Notice the man doesn't have like really good Trinitarian theology. He doesn't have a long prayer where he says, I repent of my sins and my wrongdoing. And so, therefore, Jesus, can you save my soul so that I can go to eternity with you? And here's what I believe about heaven. And here's what I believe about the Bible. None of that. It's just, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And for Jesus, he says, good enough. That's good enough. I'll remember you. Today you'll be with me in paradise. And if that story seems confusing to you, maybe it's because you were sold a version of the Christian religion that says that you have to jump through more hoops than that. You have to go through certain rituals. You need to say certain things. But this is not what we see with the thief on the cross next to Jesus. Paul, actually, this argument that Paul is making in the book of Romans kind of explains why that is the case. Paul is laying out this case that we as humans could not possibly save ourselves. None of us is good enough, which is why Jesus was good enough to save us out of his abundant love and out of his generosity and his compassion. And in making that argument about Jews and Gentiles now being able to be saved by Jesus, he quotes Genesis 15 and he says, Abraham believed and it was credited to him as righteousness. Abraham's faith, Abraham's belief was credited to him as righteousness. Credited to him, not a transactional credit, but it was a gift given to him because of his belief. Now, at this point, we need to get through the religious terminology because belief sometimes means, okay, I assert that these propositional claims are true. This is not the type of belief that Paul is talking about here. I think in the text, we can replace the word belief with the word trust. And when you look at these moments of these shining moments in Abraham's life, you see that Abraham trusted God. And so then he went out and moved to a different place. Abraham trusted God. And so he did certain things in his life. He failed a lot as well, but it was his trust of God that was credited to him as righteousness. And that's why Paul uses him as this prototype for how salvation works. It's trust in God. It's trust in Jesus on the cross. Not even trust in the act of Jesus. Notice the thief trusts Jesus, the person, on the cross. When you trust him, it's credited to you as righteousness. So what does it look like to trust God, to trust Jesus? Whenever I think about what it means to trust God, I think about my daughter. And right after the live action Aladdin movie was released, we used to play this game. And we would ask our smart speaker, I won't say her name so yours doesn't activate. We'd ask our smart speaker to play the song One Jump. It's the one jump, that song. And we would run around our house, climbing over the sofas, ducking under tables, walking over chairs. She was about 4 or 5 at the time. And we would run all over our house as this song was playing. And if you know the song, at the end, there's this moment where it says, "Wish me happy landing, all I gotta do is jump." And when we knew that part of the song was coming, my daughter would do this thing. She would find the closest, tallest piece of furniture, so maybe up on the back of the sofa, or she'd go up a few steps on our stairs, or maybe even get up onto the dinner table. I know maybe that's bad parenting, I don't know. And when Aladdin yells, "All I gotta do is jump," she would jump into my arms. That's what trust looks like. It's jumping into the arms of a father that you know loves you so much that he will catch you. She's not trusting her ability to flap her arms and fly. She's not trusting her ability to stick the landing if I don't catch her. She's just trusting me to catch her. And before you think, okay, so it's just blind faith. No, my daughter knows how strong I am, and she knows that I can actually hold her. But it's different than just propositionally asserting, I know that my father has the ability and strength to be able to hold me if I jump off of this surface. She's not just stating that type of data, saying that she believes that fact. What she's doing is she's saying, I know he can catch me, so here I go. I know that his love is good, so I'm going to jump. And that's what it looks like to trust our Father. That's what it looks like to have that faith, that belief credited to you as righteousness, just to be willing to jump. And in terms of your salvation and your assurance of salvation, to jump into the arms of the Father means to know, I know his love is bigger than my sin. I know that my worthiness isn't what's going to save me right now. I just have to trust his arms. So if you've trusted Jesus, that's good enough. If you're wondering when is it good enough, if you've trusted him, if you've said, Jesus, I know I can't do this thing by myself. I need you. Jesus, I know that I'm not getting into the kingdom by myself. I'm not living this life of the kingdom. I need you. Remember, the guy on the cross who said, remember me when you come into your kingdom, he didn't have his theology straight. He didn't live a perfect life. In fact, he died shortly after asking Jesus to remember him. But for Jesus, he says, hey, today you're with me in paradise. So if you're worried, if you're anxious, if you're fearing, if there's a God with his checklist waiting till you get your act together, I would encourage you, jump into the arms of the Father that loves you. He can be trusted to forgive you and to want to be with you forever. Find rest and peace in that truth.